I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today I'm going to revisit a clip I filmed way back in 2020 with my kids when I had planned on doing a dyeing twisted skeins 3 times based on the colors the kids picked. And over 2 years later, we're finally gonna do this video. I thought that it was fitting because my kids have the day off from school, so they're home, there'll be chaos and noise in the background. I may have to do a lot of voiceovers because the feeling they'll be playing video games and stuff in the background. But we're gonna have fun and see what kind of colorways my younger children dreamed up. So now let's go back in time and see what they had to say. Lucas, pick 3 colors.
Orange, red, and gold.
Okay. Ryder, pick 3 colors.
Green, blue, and black.
Green, blue, and black? All right. Thank you, kids. And checking on this clip, not only was it from 2020, but it was from April 2020. Suddenly, the reason why I never made that video makes a little bit more sense. I'm glad we can make it now. Today we are going to dye Knit Pick Stroll fingering weight yarn. This yarn is 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon. And I'm not sure if I said already, but we're going to be dyeing these as twisted skeins. And we'll start with dry yarn for the first one. This is a fun way to layer color. I'm twisting around, not super tightly right now. We may do tighter later, but I'm just trying to twist these up. Dyeing yarn with twisted skeins gives you some random patterns. It applies a decent resist into the yarn, so that way you will maintain potentially some aspects of each of the individual colors that we have. However, I do plan to mix a lot of the colors that the kids wanted from some acid dye stocks that I have already. I have some primary colors and I think a few other random colors in my collection. That one I did a little bit tighter, which is fine. We'll just try to make sure we match the tightness for each of the 2 colorways. And even though I will be actually dyeing them simultaneously, I think I'll show one colorway and then the next here for the video. But now they're twisted up so we can dye the first round. I started mixing 5 of the 6 colors we'll be using today, using primarily 3 primary colors from Dharma: Brilliant Yellow, Caribbean Blue, and Deep Magenta. Plus I also have a 1% stock of Cabernet on hand, which I plan to use to attempt to mix a golden color. For our orange, I measured out 15 milliliters of our yellow and 5 milliliters of the magenta. For the red, I did 15 milliliters of our magenta and 5 milliliters of our yellow, because I know from our triad color mixing exercise that this will give us a nice red and a nice orange. For the gold, I started with the Brilliant Yellow and then added some drops of Cabernet to make it a little bit less bright, a little bit dirtier. At least that was my hope. For our green, I went with 15 milliliters of our yellow and 5 milliliters of the Caribbean Blue. For the blue, also, this is all referring to that color mixing triad, I used 15 milliliters of our Caribbean Blue and 5 milliliters of our Deep Magenta. Now for the final color, which is black, that isn't something I can really mix with these primaries, and I'm going to hold off on mixing that until I see what we end up with our blue and green, so then I can decide how intense I want the black to be on our yarn, because I will be mixing that probably from true black as a dry powder. And just as reference, whenever I'm dealing with dry dye powders, I am wearing a deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves. You may also have noticed that when I go and I'm rinsing out my graduated cylinder, I'm just adding that water to one of the cups to leave no dye behind. This isn't really going to affect any of the proportions. So that's why you might come and see me add a larger volume at some point. For both of the dye baths, we're going to start off with 16 cups of water and 3 tablespoons of white vinegar. And now we are going to start with our
orange.
Now I have not layered colors quite like this, where I have mixed all of the colors from just mixing them myself. I have done it with just other colors. I don't think I've done it with custom ones that I've mixed. So we might get some breaking on some of the colors, but we also might not. We won't really know until we see how things go. But anyway, this is our orange. And I'm gonna come in with our 200 grams of dry yarn. And I think I'm gonna go with the ones that are slightly tighter twisted. And we are gonna add them in. So for Lucas's colorway, I only have about a total of 60 milliliters of dye mixed. And that is because, you know, so the colors will be more intense since they're on smaller areas than maybe they would be otherwise. The dye bath is warming up. It's not that hot yet, but I'm gonna set a timer, I think, for 15 minutes. But if I notice the colors all absorb sooner, then we'll come in. But in general, these steps can take a tiny bit of more time just because there's not as much surface area here. There is resist, and so it's just gonna take longer for the colors to strike. It's been 15 minutes, and for good measure, I'm gonna just add another tablespoon of white vinegar. We only have a little bit of some yellows left in here, so not a lot of stuff, but yeah, if it looks like our next color isn't feeling red enough, we can always add a little bit more pink to the dye bath, so we'll check that before we add the yarn in. I do see a little bit of a pink halo around the pot. So now that I'm removing the yarn, ooh, that's pretty. That's pretty. I'm gonna remove the yarn so it can start to cool. And I should bring the secondary container closer. Now that I'm going to remove the yarn to let it start to cool, we will wipe that up before we go for our next round. And this one, the twist is already starting to open up a little bit there. You can see our resist. It looks beautiful. And what I'm going to do is dunk this in the water and wipe it around the edge. There will be some more pink there, but we did clean it a bit. I'm actually gonna turn off the heat until we're ready to go for the next color. We are gonna reset Lucas's colorway and open up these twisted orange skeins. Now when we retwist, I'm not necessarily gonna start for the same parts, from the same spots. You can see that we have some large sections of white, especially when we looked into the interior of the skein. And so we want some of that to try to be on the outside, if we can. So I'm gonna hold one end in one hand, and then the way I twist wet skeins, because it's harder with tension, is I set it on the counter and I twist it like this. That makes it a little bit easier, and I'm gonna manually wrap this around, tuck the edge in, and so you can see that we're gonna layer on top of some of the orange, but also there is white exposed that we will be layering on top of. And I'm gonna do a similar thing here, grab it in one hand and rotate here. And we'll have a chance with the third color to try to get anything that got less pigment than the first time. But now we are ready to go layer on our red. I started heating up the dye bath again so we can bring in our second color, the
Red.
which I still expect to have some pink elements to it. But if you take a magenta and add some yellow, then you get more of a pure red. And in fact, I do have a whole video where I used the primary colors, these primary colors, to create a, quote, perfect rainbow fade set. And so I did that using some triad color mixing. But to get the best results with your color mixing, I 100% recommend that you're starting with fresh stocks versus old stocks. But let's add in our twisted skeins. I'm gonna grab my little fish flipper. So you can see that now that we're in here, things are a little bit pink, but it is still quite red, especially compared to what we had on the previous round. So I'm going to, I think, wait about 15 minutes again. It may need a little bit more time because the pot cooled off a bit, but we'll see where we are in 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, there is still a lot of red in here. And since our next color is lighter, we may end up needing to bring in a yarn mop or something to help us. But first, I am going to use 3 tablespoons of white vinegar, and I'll give this an additional 15 minutes. Yeah, if we need to, we can add some yarn in to just soak up that extra color before we go into our more golden yellow. Okay, the extra acid helped a lot. Ooh, I wonder how much of the orange is left because I'm just seeing red right now. But given that we're adding yellow over this in a moment, that's gonna bring in some more orange notes. There's still a little bit of some pinks in there, but most of the color is in our yarn. So I don't think we need a yarn mop, but what I will do is once again wipe the edge down, because I think as I picked it up, that brought some more of those pinks in. You can see all that color from the edge. And just for my own sake, let's bring in our golden yellow.
Gold.
To see what it looks like here in the pan now. There is a hint of pink in it. It's looking, in person it's looking a little bit more orange than I think it's looking on camera, but I think that we're gonna have a beautiful golden yellow, so I think it's gonna work great. But once the yarn cools a bit, then we can twist it. Let's retwist our yarn. It's still a little bit warm. And to try to make sure things don't get tangled, I always go and look for one of the ties before I start laying it out, because then I can see if I've got anything twisted around the wrong way. So I'm going to take one of this lightest patches and move it over towards one of the end that I'm going to hold that'll end up being on the outside of the yarn. We have pretty good coverage here already, but a little more color on that spot won't hurt. I am definitely still feeling orange notes. The red has dominated the way things are, but again, we're adding a yellow on now, and so that should contribute to what we see. So again, I'm using the table to help me twist this up, and I always get excited when I see white on the outside. And again, we could have twisted it in the opposite direction, but let's go dye the yarn. All right, let's add our yarn to this golden yellow color, which is mostly yellow with a little bit of Cabernet in it. Ooh, look at that. The Cabernet is a very pigmented color, so you don't need a lot to go very far. I love what this yellow is doing to the yarn and what we see already. I'm curious with how bright versus more gold it'll feel. It definitely felt golden when we mixed it, but we'll see what happens as we heat this up. I'm gonna wait about 15 minutes before we check in. We'll want to have at least 30 minutes in heat before we're done, but 15 minutes should tell us if I want more acid and things like that. Normally, if I'm designing a twisted colorway like this myself, I tend to go from lightest to darkest, or I guess brightest to deepest. So if I was designing this, I would have gone yellow, orange, red, because then the color with the most pigment that maybe would take the most time to absorb would come last, which if that takes longer to absorb, that's fine. But I think the little bit of pink that we had in there didn't cause any issues, at least not that I can see for now. So I don't think we have any problems here. I can't wait to see what this looks like. I mean, I'll have to, but I'm excited to see what this looks like. It's been 15 minutes and we're honestly not that hot, and there's a lot of color in here. a lot of color. I think one of the things I'm gonna do is move the skeins a little bit. This may push some color more into the interior. Oh, that's so pretty. Oh no, I just opened up that one. Okay, I'm not gonna move them anymore because I accidentally opened one. We may decide to open them all if after 15 more minutes there still feels like there's a lot of color in here. but I just added, I guess, about 4 tablespoons of white vinegar. So we'll wait another 15 minutes, then we'll see. The 15 minutes are up. There's a little bit of color left in there, but most of the color is now in our yarn. I'm gonna turn off the heat and just leave the yarn in here to cool slowly and maybe absorb a little more color. And now let's dye yarn inspired by the colors that Ryder picked out 2.5 years ago. Once again, this is 16 cups of water with 3 tablespoons of white vinegar to start. And I'm gonna bring over that custom cream that we mixed. And again, this was 3 parts yellow, 1 part blue. And it is a nice bright green. Now this could end up breaking, which means that we could see some separation. We could see some blue halo off of either of the green or the blue that we mixed. But I'm excited to see how this comes out. And so now I'm going to bring over the 2 twisted skeins that are a little bit looser. And we're going to add these to our dye bath. And so it looks like there's not that much color in here. And the color will intensify because, again, of the surface area that we have. I'm trying not to squeeze things too much. With Knit Pick Stroll, colors do soak up water. The yarn soaks up water really quickly. So it's a nice one for starting when things are dry. But I'm gonna check back in after, I think, 15 minutes. The pot isn't quite that hot yet. And we'll see where we are color-wise and decide if we need more acid or what. The 15 minutes are up. We're very steamy, so I'm gonna turn off the heat for now. And I'm gonna go ahead and add a tablespoon of white vinegar for our next stage, our blue stage, because we only have a little bit of blue left, which isn't a problem because our next color is going to be a blue. But ooh, okay, this one opened up and kind of fell apart a little bit. Ooh, that's so pretty. And so we're gonna do the same thing here. Drain some of the water, but I'm gonna have the heat off and the pot will cool off a little bit, but we want the skeins to cool for a while so that way I can easily handle it. All right, let's open up the skeins from the green. And just like we saw after the first round with the last one, we do have some patches of color. But since I believe that these skeins were a little bit looser when they went in, we have more color penetration. This interior part isn't entirely white like we saw from part of our orange. Okay, and I'm gonna rotate so we can try to start from another region. But again, I'm gonna hold the skein in one hand and then use the other to twist. We could also try twisting in the opposite direction. That is something that we definitely could do. But unlike when you're twisting dry yarn and things just kind of snap on themselves really easily, when we're doing this here, you need to have a little bit more manual attention, just so that way we can get the color up. And you can see that I'm sort of manually wrapping it around. There's just less tension and you don't really want to stretch the fibers too much. The dye bath still hasn't quite warmed up as much as it had before. As we bring in the blue, this one was 15 milliliters of the Caribbean blue and 5 milliliters of our deep magenta. And while our Caribbean blue is a very turquoise color, this mixture gives us this more royal blue kind of color. And on camera, maybe it almost feels a little bit purple, but it really isn't enough pink with this blue to start to feel very purple. And now we're gonna add in our yarn. And here we can really see some contrast between that green and now our blue layer that we have as I just gently poke it down. Now, I think what I'm gonna do, maybe we'll wait about 15 minutes. I know we added some vinegar already, but the blue may require more acid, so we'll see. I'm still undecided how much black we're gonna wanna add for our next layer. we'll wait and see what the colors are feeling like to know how much I want to pump up the black or if I want it to be a little bit more gray. But anyway, I'll see you in about 15 minutes. It's been 15 minutes. We have a lot of blue left in here. I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of white vinegar. I feel like this is very similar to what I did on Lucas's set as well. A lot of the color is definitely in our yarn, and there's breaking. You can see the more royal blue and also some turquoise hues because I think some of those pinks struck first. I'm gonna let this have another 15 minutes here in this pot, but we would not need to get a yarn mop for our next round since our last color is a black and that is going to be more pigmented than what we have here already. Having some blue in there wouldn't cause any big issues, but we'll check back in after 15 minutes. But I did decide to go and measure out the black now. I put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves to measure out the black dye. We won't have to use all of the dye, so I could decide to edit this a little bit more if I need to. But to kind of carry on with the 0.2 grams of dye that we've been using each round, I weighed out 0.2 grams of Dharma's True Black Acid dye and dissolved it in some hot water, not worrying about the volume. We still have some blues here. I'm gonna bring the heat all the way down to low because it is very, very steamy. And again, I'm not gonna worry about those blues. This is gorgeous right now. This combination of the green and blue looks amazing. Sometimes I wonder at stages like this if I should stop versus keep going because we have something that is so beautiful. I mean, look at the dimension in there. But we're gonna go ahead and do the black because that's part of the original vision. And I think it'll be fine because we have some beautiful depth in those colors already. But while we wait for it to cool to open it up, I am gonna bring over our black dye. We can always remove the yarn early if I'm satisfied with the color. We do not have to let all of it absorb. We can bring in a yarn mop. There's a lot of things we can do. But I'm gonna leave this heat on low while we wait for our yarn to be ready. Time for our last twist. All right, I want to look for an area that has some lightness, and I watched this strand go the wrong direction, and I want that to be on the outside so we pick up some color there. Of course, since we're using black, we're gonna get a lot of pigment going in here, but I think that it'll be pretty on here. So I'm gonna start twisting, and there's no reason why we would have to stop after doing this 3 times. We could go on and do 4 or even 5, but I find that after 3 we get a reasonable amount of color penetration, and so I end up being pretty happy with where we are after doing the 3 times. And so that's why I've always done it that way, but I like where this one is now. We got beautiful color penetration, and so we could completely call this colorway done now. But we're ready to go in. Before we go into the black, I think I want to add a little more water here, which will change the pH a bit, but I just feel like this water level had decreased a lot. So I just added 4 cups of cool tap water, which is definitely going to make the pot a little bit colder. But now we're going to add the yarn. You can barely see it right now because the dye is so opaque. I think we're gonna run with it. There's a lot of depth that we have in here, and we're gonna see where we end up. So I will be back in about 15 minutes. And if the color hasn't all absorbed, one thing we could always do is open up the skein and add all of the yarn here to get more of the color all over. I don't think that's what I'm gonna do today, but that's always an option for something we could do if the color isn't all absorbing or if there's just too much contrast in your yarn already. But we didn't have a ton of white left, so I think we'll be good. It's been 15 minutes and it looks like there's a lot of color here, but I think because you can kind of see the yarn beneath the surface a little more, and there's still a fair amount of color in here. Ooh, that's so pretty though. That's so pretty. Oh no, that's also untwisting. Okay, we are not gonna move it more because we're starting to untwist, but I'm gonna add more acid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we'll check back in after another 15 minutes. The 15 minutes are up and we're super steamy. I'm turning off the heat now. There's a little bit of blue left in the water, but I think almost all the color is in the yarn, and the one that untwisted didn't untwist anymore. So that's really good, but I'm gonna leave the yarn here in the pot and let it cool slowly. That'll give it more heat, more time, so maybe those last bits of colors will absorb, maybe not. But once the yarn is cool, then we can untwist it and wash it. There is the tiniest hint of color left in here, but the dye bath is way cooler. What I'm gonna do now is attempt to open the skein and add on a removable nylon zip tie. This way, as we wash it, we don't introduce much, any tangling is the goal. We do still have some very pastel patches, especially so far in this one that did not untwist. But actually the one that did untwist a little bit, while I see a little more gray there, I do see some pastel areas as well. This is really, really pretty. And before cleaning this pot, let's go get the other yarn, because we'll wash everything all together. I'm so curious how much pastel we'll have left in here. Ooh, I see some white left. Oh, fun. I think doing this golden yellow really did highlight some of the orange tones that we have in here really, really nicely. I love how over 2.5 years ago, one kid picked really cool tone colors and the other picked really warm tone colors. I did ask Lucas on a walk today what colors he would pick now, and he said he would have picked, I think, blue, light blue, and turquoise. So color preferences change between 9 and I guess 6.5. But let's wash the yarn. I'm gonna fill this basin up with water. We're gonna add a little bit of some dish soap here. Hopefully we don't see any bleeding because we've mixed the two skeins together. I did notice that one tiny dot of turquoise ended up on our yellow and orange skeins. I'll try to see if I find it when it's dry. But I think that came from just from the shower curtain at one point as we were laying them out. There must have been a little bit of dye there. But I'm not seeing any color bleeding, which is fantastic. I'm gonna just soak this in our soapy water a little bit longer, but then we're gonna go ahead and rinse out all of the soap, put the yarn through my spin dryer, hang it up to dry, and then we'll come get a closer look. But I do have to say, I am impressed with how my kids will mute the video games and how they'll be quiet if I'm like quiet on set now that they're home and playing around when I'm working. I don't think the same would have been said 2.5 years ago. So a lot of change has happened in the last 2.5 years. And here are the colors that my kids picked out. Lucas, pick 3 colors.
Orange, red, and gold.
Okay. Ryder, pick 3 colors.
Cream, blue, and black.
I adore how both of these came out. I love the more sunset layered look we got from the colors Lucas picked, and then the more deeper, moodier, cool toned colorway from Ryder's color choices. We ended up with excellent color penetration and color coverage, whichever one I was doing. And it was fun how there were some moments like things untwisting in the pots that mirrored each other. Even though I decided to edit it like doing one colorway and then doing the next, I was filming them side by side. So there were a lot of similarities that mirrored each other. All I know is that I want to do this whole concept again and let the kids, and maybe I'm not going to wait 2 years or almost 3 years at this point before filming the next iteration, but I think it would be fun to try this again and to see what colors they pick. Although hopefully I can convince Lucas to pick something besides blue, light blue, and turquoise, but we'll see. Even if that's what he picks, we can have some fun with it. It's early in the morning on a weekend when I am filming this. And so I know that the kids are itching to come downstairs to watch some TV, but they also aren't in the mood to be on camera, so I may film their off-camera reactions to these colorways in a moment. Tell me what you think of the yarn.
Those two right there are sort of good, but those two are the ones I like the most. I prefer the turquoise-ish ones. The red and orange and yellow ones are my favorite.
Oh, for real?
Well, and the ones with green. So really like all of them.
Wait, so wait, Ryder, you go point to your favorite ones. Oh, you like all of it?
Yeah.
Okay, but if you had to pick one, which one is your favorite, Ryder?
One of each color.
You like all of them?
Yeah, but one of these accents, basically they're all different. So I like these two.
Oh, okay, but if you had to pick just one of them, which one would be your favorite?
These two mixed together.
Okay, thank you, Ryder. That was not what I was expecting. And Lucas, why don't you go pick up the one that's your favorite? I am not surprised given the way things have changed.
He loves blue now instead of orange.
I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today is my birthday! Woohoo! I'm 39 years old, I think. Yes. Having a December birthday means sometimes I change the year that I am in my head way before my birthday because I can't look at the current year versus birth year for most of the year. But I felt like that this was a very appropriate video to share on my birthday because the clips of my kids really young gives me a lot of joy.
Siri, pixie time.
Please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. I post at least 2 videos every single week throughout the entire year. And next week, the ChemKnits Hanukkah special is going to start, where I think this year's series is going to have 11 videos. We're going to have a video every night for the 8 nights of Hanukkah, 2 bonus videos, and then a vlog. So we will be going into the new year with a bang, with a lot of content. So if you need a little bit of escape during the holiday season, I got you covered.